Hello and welcome, star people. Welcome to the Outlaw Astrology podcast. This is your weekly deep dive into true crime and the unexplained phenomena that goes through the world through an astrological lens. I am your host and presenter, the Cosmic Outlaw, the Cosmic Detective, and your intrepid star guide, 8 p.m, ready to explore the mysteries of the cosmos with you. But before we begin, please like, subscribe, and share if this kind of content resonates with you. Give us 5 stars, particularly on Spotify and Apple iTunes, and also any other platforms that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on. And also a trigger warning: this episode discusses mass hysteria and governmental deception. Also, we have the Daily Stargazer newsletter for those of you who want to stay cosmically looped in. And with that being said, onward. Okay, so if you have been paying attention and listening to this podcast for any length of time, in season 9, the last episode, I talked about what is known as the Phoenix Lights. And the reason why I'm doing a revisit for a 3rd episode is because I also wanted to share some of the theories, because I found them fascinating. You see, when I research, investigate cases or investigate topics, I often wonder about the more intriguing ones and feel the need to come back. Sometimes I forget to do it, and other times other things excite me more. I am a neurospicy person and my mind is very busy. So we're going to start by setting the scene here, and here we go. The Phoenix Lights are a phenomenon that occurred on March 13th, 1997, and that is a night considered to have changed UFOlogy forever. Now, I didn't know that UFOlogy was a thing, let alone that I'm pronouncing it correctly, or ufology is, I think, another way to pronounce it, but in any case, it was considered a defining point. Location: Phoenix, Arizona, and the surrounding areas, including as close as Nevada and as far away as California. The time is approximately 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Witnesses, including Arizona witnesses, including the sitting governor at the time, Fife Symington, all saw this. And the description is a V-shaped formation of amber lights moving silently across the sky. The V-shaped formation did not change. It was silent. It did not make noise. It just kind of hovered there. In fact, one of the witnesses points out that he was outside with his children on that evening, and one of the children had said to the parent, "I could literally throw a stone, a rock, a can, anything and hit it because it was hovering that closely." So that is the setup to these events. Now, let's look at the astrological blueprint. So we've got, and just doing a check because I like to be as accurate as possible when it comes to these things. We've got the sun in Pisces, the moon in Gemini, and we've got the rising sign Libra. So sun in Pisces, we're dealing with a collective consciousness, a heightened spiritual awareness, potentially. Moon in Gemini, mass communication, shared information. Ascendant in Libra, the public perception and balance between belief and skepticism, keeping in mind that Libra, whilst it has a reputation for being relationship and connection oriented, is also an air sign, and air signs are about the mental realm. That means the ability to step back emotionally as much as possible. You can't do that 100%, but as much as possible, so that you can see things without your emotions swaying you one direction or another. And that's most things people don't know, that Librans are good at that. We've got also, and let me have a look, because like I said, I like to be as accurate as possible. We've got, with the ascendant being in Libra, that makes Venus, the chart ruler. Now, Venus is hanging out in Pisces, the sign of its exaltation, about 5 degrees off of the Sun in Pisces, and it is an entire stellium, which is for 3 or more planets. For when I do when I do a reading, it is 3 or more planets. At 18 degrees, we have Venus in Pisces. 23 degrees, we have the Sun in Pisces, and we also have at 25 and 28 degrees respectively, Mercury and the South Node. So energetically, fantasy will probably hold sway. And here's why I say that. Because the North Node is our comfort zone, our strengths, what we tend to lean on in times of stress that has worked before. So things that have worked for us rather well before, we have a tendency to lean on that information. Pisces is about idealism. We are not alone. It's about fantasy and imagination, because those two things actually go hand in hand. In addition to that, it is looking up at the stars and maybe seeing a more spiritual picture. So Venus is exalted in Pisces, and also means the enhanced ability to receive mysterious messages and also to see them, perceive them. Venus is about values. It's about what matters to you. It is about what you're attracted to, and also what repels you in equal measure. Now, let's have a look to see what the outers are doing. We have Saturn at 8 degrees of Aries hanging out in the 7th house. We have Chiron at 1 degree of Scorpio in the 2nd. We have Pluto at 5 degrees of Sagittarius in the 3rd. We have Neptune at 29 degrees of Capricorn. By the way, the 29th degree is very important, so we will cover it a little bit more deeply. And we have another stellium in the 5th house, right next door to that groovy 6th house. And we have Uranus in its own sign at 7 degrees, 4-degree orb with Jupiter. And then we have Ceres, also in Aquarius, in the 5th house. And so we're going to look at Uranus in Aquarius, and that's technological advancement and unexpected revelations. But we're also going to talk about, let's look at also Neptune. And Neptune in Capricorn is that tension between, and in the 4th house being that secret personally held. So what most people might think or feel about the situation. So personally held beliefs, it is a tension between being imaginative, being fantastic, being open-minded and receptive to the idea that there may be more to the situation, there may be more out there than we've been led to believe. But that Saturn part, which that Capricorn part, is being shot called by Saturn in Aries. And Saturn in Aries is boldly going, but with caution. Blazing trails, being the first, but with caution. And that is in the 7th house of Aries. The ascendant is also in that house, and it is in a partile conjunction with Eris, a dwarf planet that lives in the 2nd asteroid belt, which is called the Kuiper belt or the Kuiper belt, depending on who you ask, and out there where Pluto happens to reside. So it's located in the same place, and this is, Saturn hanging about 8 degrees. Is calling the shots on that Neptune, and Saturn is also about others. Others might, what they might be thinking. And Saturn is about holding the side for in any astrology, even quantum astrology. Saturn is about how much skepticism, how much of this can we attribute to something going on in our natural world, which includes people, missile testing, things like that are technologically advanced for like the end of the 20th century, without going too far off the beaten path. Saturn energy is about the edges of things, meaning that it defines, it creates boundaries. And when you've got it in Aries, you've got, we want to blaze trails, but let's be cautious about this first. And Neptune in Capricorn is not a comfortable energy because it's very grounded. It's like, okay, I love imagination. I love to let my mind go off, and I'm speaking generally as if I were a person hanging out on that night. I would love to listen to people spout off. It's fun. It's wonderful. I love the idea. And our own personal beliefs, because I said Neptune in the 4th house, our own personal beliefs might be fantastic. But Capricorn is saying, let's be cautious here. Before we blaze trails, before we pioneer, before we go off half-cocked, shouldn't we have a plan? Which is actually a really good idea. Alongside for the ride with Neptune at 24 degrees is Pallas, the asteroid, of strategy, and 20 degrees is the Imam Quelli, which is, the private part of the charts, who you are when you're at home sort of vibe. And this might be personal beliefs, personal ideas, things like that. All of this together in Capricorn is saying, hold your horses. Yes, this is great. Yes, this is fascinating, but we should probably investigate this in a more empirical, grounded way so that we make certain we're dotting those I's, crossing those T's, and not getting ahead of ourselves before we have enough information to decide definitively what this is. Okay? And so we've also got Uranus next door because there's a lot of activity in the bottom of this chart. Uranus is about the unexpected and also about technology. We've got a V-shaped vehicle quietly hovering in an area that people can see. I mean, those lights were seen for miles. A lot of people saw them really far away where you wouldn't have thought they would be seen. And so Uranus in Aquarius in its own sign, but not comfortably hanging out in its own house. It technically loves the 11th house because that's the house of its rulership. It has an affinity for that energy, but it's hanging out in the unexpected. So speculative ventures are 5th house energies. Creativity is also a 5th house energy. And so we've got people coming up with very creative theories and a little out there because that's Uranus out there, but that energy is Aquarian energy, which can be impartial. Yes, it can be out there, but it's impartial. It's the ability to step back. So in our speculating, we can get wild. And here's the thing. Jupiter is along for the ride, 4 degrees, riding shotgun on this stellium hanging out in the 5th. And that means big, expansive ideas, but it also means the ability to get really weird, really fast, before there's any, empirical data to put ground underneath this. So that is a tendency in this type of chart reading and these type of events. So Uranus does not dispose it to any other planet because it's in the sign of its own rulership and sitting rather uncomfortably in a creative house, which means a lot of creative ideas, theories of what could have been, what could go wrong, are they here, they being extraterrestrials, etc. And Jupiter, whatever alongside it, whenever it rides shotgun on any planet, has a tendency to make things bigger and more expansive, which can be a good and a bad thing. Now, Venus is the chart ruler, and as I said, makes it very idealistic. Now, it's really 5 degrees off, that makes this more of a idealistic, sensitive, and imaginative type placement. The 6th house is the house of routine. So I would say with all of this energy here, there was a lot of focus, a lot of people's dinner tables and breakfast nooks. People sat around having this conversation for quite a while. In fact, it has gone on since 1997 to the present as an unsolved, really captivating event. Not the only event, because there are other events. I believe right before this event, the previous day, the 12th of March, there were lights in the sky. A bit after this, in about the early aughts, there was an event in April 21st, and that turned out to be a hoax. Yeah, getting to that. So, once again, objects in the sky, and then V-formation, and then they turned into a square, and then it turned out to be a hoax, and someone was just trying to prove that the armed forces had gotten it right. It was just flares, everybody calm down, that sort of thing. So just to say that is to let you all know that it's not a case that everybody believes and everybody sees as solved, okay? So that Venus in Pisces can be a good thing, meaning receptive, open-minded, but it can also be highly gullible and very sensitive to emotional influence. If someone believes something very deeply, passionately, and are idealistic, it can sway people on the daily. Let's see. Looking at other items. Let's look at Pluto next. Pluto is in Sagittarius. It is in the 3rd house. That means expanded, open-minded. Pluto in the 3rd house is about transformative ideas. And UFOlogy has had quite the build-up since the late 40s, and Area 51 and all of that. It has become quite the niche within itself. And so Pluto is about agency, it's about autonomy, it's also about power. When you see it in a quantum chart, you're still looking at transformation, but you're looking at the transformation of ideas and a transformation of minds. The 3rd house is more than likely, and always, as far as when I do a reading, is about local, knowledge, what is happening locally, as opposed to the 9th house, which is out there, okay? So if we're looking at what happened on Earth, it's highly transformative. If I saw this Pluto hanging out in the 9th house, out there is out there, literally out there. It could be any planet surrounding any of those billions of suns in this galaxy alone. There are billions of suns in the Milky Way galaxy, but there are hundreds of thousands of galaxies that are part of the cluster of which our galaxy is a part, okay? So if you're looking at Pluto hanging in the 3rd house, and we are in a fire sign, it's enthusiasm, really enthusiastic. What's out there? What's the truth? The truth is out there. X-Files, right? That's what people would be thinking in their local coffee houses, local neighborhoods, having chats on the news channels. That would be the vibe. And it would disposit to Jupiter in Aquarius, which is far out theories, and not necessarily a bad thing to be far out. I'm just merely stating that far out needs to be grounded with caution, with boundaries, and let's take this, if we can, step by step, and make certain we're being as specific and detail-oriented. Before we start going to the far out, let's try the mundane first. So, wild speculation, Uranus conjunct Jupiter. And Neptune conjunct, at the 29th degree conjunct Pallas, would be strategy. Okay, how do we approach this? Given that disenchantment can happen with Neptune, confusion can happen with Neptune, what are the real facts? What's the objective here? What are we going to do type of vibe at the bottom of everything, which is the 4th house? How do we handle this? Let's do it step by step. let's have an objective, let's get a plan, let's have systems and all of that in place so we can do this in a way that makes sense, that's not likely to make us look like fools, because human beings' greatest fear is, one of them is to look foolish in front of other people. Okay? So that is how the outers are performing at this point. Now, if we're going to look at theories, theories and astrological correlations, military flares theory. Okay, so the military was contacted and they said, oh, those are just flares, don't worry about it. People are like, wait a second, those things didn't flare. We know what flares look like. Flares have smoke trails. These things didn't have smoke trails. These things sat in a V formation and did not move. The lights were amber. They did not change. It was very calming. And the military said, look, we'll show you. And they came out and gave a very big display. Look, see, we're dropping flares. The problem was that the flares did not form a V formation. They did not even get close. And yes, you could see the trails of smoke. So people are like, wait a second, guys, what are you trying? What are you trying here? What are you trying to cover up here? Because it seems like you're doing way too much trying to convince us here, which means you're up to something. So we've got Mars hanging out on the North Node at 28 degrees. That is a partile conjunction with the North Node, Mars 28, in Virgo. Okay? And so that flare theory, Mars and Virgo in the 12th house is hidden things. Hidden things. So, what's the military up to? Are they doing secret operations? What are they up to? Why are they doing this? It seems like a big smoke show. It seems like they're trying to lie to us. So 12th house would be that which you cannot see. And Virgo is discerning. It wants things to make sense. Mars and Virgo's looking for answers, and I'm going to do the service to my community, anyone might say, by running this down and saying, wait a second, let me ask the questions other people are asking but don't feel comfortable asking. That's Mars and Virgo being discerning, being efficient, making sense. And it's like, the explanation you gave us don't make no sense. Okay? Then we have extraterrestrial visitors. So we got Neptune, as I said, in Capricorn, and this at the 29th degree. It's called an energetic degree. It's a final pulse. And basically it is like Capricorn energy on steroids. And the whole point is to obliterate confusion and illusion and deception and disillusionment. And so it points to structured contact from beyond. Could be. Is it? Could it be? Because it didn't make noise. That's the thing. It didn't make noise. And other people thought, well, it's not making noise. Maybe it's a military plane, because that's not unusual. There are fighter pilots, even a fighter pilot spoke up and said, well, I think they were testing, they were doing this, that, and the other. And I say this, that, and the other because it was very vague. And, well, could the military have been testing? Is that possible? Well, a lot of people thought, well, sure, they do that a lot. And then when people see them, they say, oh, wait, no, you didn't see that. That's not what happened. It was a weather balloon, because they don't want to give away what they're doing to foreign powers that they don't trust or who would benefit greatly from this knowledge. So, military planes being tested. The problem with that theory is that military planes, one, tend to be much smaller than this particular item. This vehicle in the sky was at least 3,000, had a 3,000-foot wingspan, and most fighters are about 174 to about maybe 385 in wingspan, even the most large. Okay, so this thing was massive, it's huge. In addition to that, fighter jets make noise. You know when you're hearing them. Even if they try to be stealthy, you can still hear them. This thing was completely quiet. So that's what gave rise to the theory that it might be extraterrestrial visitors, because people have throughout history, and that is not just the modern day, throughout history you will find myth and folklore that tells the story of star people who came down from the stars to impart wisdom and to give us technology that was sorely needed before going back to the stars. You will find this in indigenous folklore to the United States, in which you will see, if you go to southwestern United States, you will find drawings in caves and on stone edifices in which they detail their interactions with the star people. Okay, so could it be? Then there's mass hysteria. And so we got the moon in Gemini's influence, and this is on collective thinking. So let's find out where the moon is hanging out, and guess where it is? It's in the 9th house at 0 degrees. Now 0 degrees is pure Gemini energy. It is inquisitive. It is curious. It asks all the questions. It is enthusiastic about information and ideas. So there's a lot of information and ideas. But the moon, even in a quantum chart, is also about what makes you feel comfortable and safe. And so being curious and being inquisitive is a safety zone. In the 9th house, which is out there, it would not be unusual for people to adopt the idea that we're being visited from far, far away and being observed. Perhaps some people asked, the visitors are interested in finding out about how much technology we have, what kind of weaponry we have. And the reason why this is thought is because a lot of those particular visitations tended to happen around where there would be Air Force bases, military installations, even in the Middle East. There was an incident with lights in the sky as well. So it happens around the world, not just the United States, not just in the UK. Okay? So could it be visitors? But yes, mass hysteria. And this mass hysteria led to even the governor deciding to jump in and have one of his chief of staff dress up as an alien with handcuffs, and it was meant to distance himself politically from all of this, because he had spoken up before he had a chance to think about it, say, yes, I saw this thing, and he didn't want his political career to be tanked by people thinking he was a quack or a conspiracy theorist. So that was his attempt to close the door on things and be humorous about it, because it really did get huge. There was a lot of action. There were lights in the sky. Sometimes they appeared even after that time period. And yes, it got a lot of churn in websites and people talking about it. Every so often another story would come up, that sort of thing, to give you an idea that people got hysterical, not like, oh my God, the world is coming to an end. More like, wow, let's talk about this. This is fascinating kind of ideas. Okay? So Gemini energy can be also a bit scattered because it's interested in getting the facts, which are out there, 9th house, as opposed to being calm, cool, and collected, whereas with other parts of the chart, okay? And so that's the moon there. Now we got government cover-up. And Saturn is about authority and tradition and stick-to-itiveness to what has worked in the past. And so Saturn in Aries indicates authority figures in conflict. Well, yes. Because on one hand, you've got the military and their authority figures saying it was just flares. Well, that was just us flaring, putting up flares. And then the governor saying, yes, I saw it. And then going, oh, it was just, we caught the alien, here he is, all jokey like, trying to protect himself. So people did not know what to believe, because there were so many different authority figures sharing different counter theories, which was very confusing to most people. So that's where you get authority figures in conflict. Now, in this chart, there is a trine, a partile trine, well, actually not a partile trine, but a really tight one, about 3 degrees apart. Saturn, recall, is at 8 degrees of Aries. Pluto is at 5 degrees of Sagittarius. This is a trine from the 7th to the 3rd house. The 3rd house would be the local thinking on things rather than the out there thinking on the 9th house. And 7th house would be other, and that would be, it could be literally just other, and this other being authority figures in this case. And trines can be wonderful. But the problem with the trine is that it's also not particularly urgent. And so it can be too much of something. And it's a lot of enthusiasm here and a lot of excitement. But that enthusiasm and excitement with 2 powers, Pluto, transformation of people's thinking, and Saturn saying, hold up there, let's not blaze new trails yet. Now, by the way, I forgot to mention that Saturn in Aries is not a comfortable placement because Saturn has an exaltation in Aries' opposite sign, which is Libra. And so, doubling down, our authority figures here, our others, are doubling down, trying to lay track as quickly as possible, as impulsively, and sometimes as recklessly, as quickly and as recklessly as possible in a completely different direction, which may or may not take the heat off the thing. So a lot of heat, a lot of excitement, a lot of assertions there, a lot of people talking. Which leads us to this. At the end of the day, in this particular case, the governor, Fife, Symington, eventually came out little in about 2000, between 2010 and 2017, and said, yeah, I actually did see the thing. I literally stood outside my house and looked at it, and it was the most awesome sight, awesome in the old school way, meaning a really interesting thing that could be great or could be frightening, and you don't know which it is. Awesome. But this is after all of the hubbub had flared up. And so some of the experts still say, some think it was a military plane. They were doing training exercises and they were trying to protect their secrets. So it was probably the military with a new technology. That's one theory that people believe. Another is that, well, it's probably not them. It's probably extraterrestrials visiting us. And there are people who hold with that. And there are still other people who are just highly confused who went, you know what, I don't know what's going on. However, I do not find that the answers given by the military or given by the government to be adequate to satiate my curiosity. That's that moon also in Gemini. Okay? So, here is what the key takeaway will be when it comes to this kind of stuff. The Phoenix lights are at this point still unexplained, but the stars can tell a different story of revelation and mystery, okay? And whatever you might think about such events, the point of asking the questions, even through astrology, is you want to also look out there and see, okay, what's mysterious and unexplained out there? But you want to turn that same focus on yourself. What is mysterious and unexplained within yourself? Okay? So, remember to join our community on the Daily Stargazer newsletter, because I tend to be there a lot. I am starting to put in more focus with YouTube and Pinterest. Those are places I tend to hang out more. On occasion, you might find me posting things on Instagram, but that is as it is. Those are my socials. And once again, thank you very much for tuning in. There shall be more of this using astrology to explore the world even at times when we're just scratching our heads. So thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, keep watching the skies, keep your feet on the ground, and question everything. Peace and Astro Magic.